My name is Elaine. I am a licensed professional counselor. I work at Recovery Happens, which is our outpatient program currently located near Sacramento and Rancho Cordova. We have local in-person services, and then we do a lot of virtual services like this. And I was asked to be here tonight to talk about self-care, which is kind of my jam, in that took me a long time to get to that place. And I really, really am passionate about how important it is in everyone's life, but especially for those of us who are in recovery from mental illness or have ongoing mental health diagnoses, recovering from substance use. But really, self-care is important to everyone. This is meant to be a psychoeducational talk. It feels really weird to me. I'm just going to be honest, because that's just kind of how I roll. I'm looking at a bunch of black screens. I totally understand the need for that, but it's going to be a little weird for me talking to, the black hole. So even though we don't want cameras on, feel free to ask questions. The goal is for you to have a greater awareness of what self-care looks like or could look like, and what the benefits are for you. So if you have any questions about that as we go through, please jump in. I'm more than happy to address anybody's curiosity. So first, self-care, right? I wish I could come up with a better name for it, and I haven't really put any effort into it. However, I know that when I hear self-care, it sounds kind of clinical to some people. And I know to other people, it sounds like, I don't have time for that. It's selfish. It's, it's not important, and I don't have time for it, and all this kind of different stuff. The truth is, we make time for the things that are important. And I like to think of self-care the way I think of brushing my teeth, right? You don't wait to start brushing your teeth until you get a cavity or your tooth starts to fall out. You brush your teeth so that you don't get the cavity or the rotten tooth, right? It's self-care is not only something that's good for you in the moment, in the present, but it's a way to be preventive and proactive in taking care of yourself. It can also be helpful in improving and nurturing your physical health, your mental health. Self-care is a huge part of recovery from substance use disorders because, well, not only because, but it also can really help prevent you from returning to use. It makes you feel better. And when I say better, I mean your stress level, maybe your anxiety, your depression. It also can be a healthy replacement. And while I don't recommend replacing one thing with another, self-care is not really a thing. It's a change in your way of life. Much like if you decide that you want to be healthier physically, if you call yourself a dieting, it feels very much as if you're depriving yourself, as if you're saying no, if you're putting up walls. And I can't speak for anybody but myself, but I know the more I deprive myself, the more I want something. And I'm more likely to substitute it for something else. Whereas if you change your eating habits, you start incorporating things that you like and are good for you, you're more likely to continue to eat that way because there's something appealing about it. And you have less of a desire to go back to the old way that you ate, just as kind of an analogy. Self-care encompasses all kinds of things. I think a A lot of people initially think about it like, going on vacation or getting a massage or a mani-pedi or whatever. All viable options, but not necessarily your day-to-day. It's not necessarily about disconnecting from your life. It's about incorporating into your life. Self-care is you taking care of your body, your brain, your mind, your feelings on a daily, so that you're at your best. Your well-being is at its best. The way I look at it in terms of that proactivity is that if you look at life on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being incredibly stressful, I'm going into a panic attack, and 1 being I'm super chill, most of us live at about a 2. Ideally, right? If you're taking care of yourself. Without self-care, if you have mental health issues, if you have substance use history, you might be more like living at a 6 or a 7. So if something really stressful happens, a trigger happens, a stressful event or a distressful event come up, you're going to pop from that 6 or 7, maybe up to a 10, and 10 feels unmanageable. Whereas with self-care, brushing your teeth every day, you're going to be living more like a 2 or a 3. So when that thing happens, you might pop up to a 5. A 5 is much more manageable today than a 10. So that's kind of the overall gist of why self-care can be helpful. The key takeaways, if you're a note taker, you're nurturing your physical and mental health. It's an important part of recovery to help avoid return to use. And during recovery, some of the key parts of self-care are connecting with other people and possibly also with therapy or group support, right? We are social animals, and part of healing is understanding and internalizing the idea that we're not alone in this. Other people have experienced things similar to, if not just like what we've gone through. And it feels a lot less isolating when we're in community. So actively taking care of your health, you lower the risk for dealing with problems later. For example, eating a healthy, balanced diet and exercising regularly, which might be part of self-care, you can reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, along with other health concerns. Your physical health and mental health affect each other. For instance, by getting enough sleep, your body rests and you can be more energized and focused on whatever you're doing. And if you take care of your mental health, it can be easier to get quality sleep, right? You have had issues with your sleep, it may be because you've got all those ruminating thoughts, right? So taking care of your mental health has that domino effect into your physical health. Likewise, good physical and mental health allow you to work toward your goals and accomplish things that are meaningful to you. In turn, your feelings of self-compassion and self-worth can go up. And when you feel good about yourself, you tend to put more effort into taking care of yourself. So you can see how that circle kind of works. Mental health includes your psychological and emotional well-being. It also includes social well-being, which might not be something that you normally think about as self-care, but respecting your own boundaries is important. It keeps you protected from the negative behaviors of others, like verbal abuse or being taken for granted or being taken advantage of. So with substance use disorder, there's a pretty good chance that you've used some kind of substance to escape from stressful things or emotional pain. When you're practicing self-care, you are nurturing your mental and physical health so that you reduce your chances of turning to drugs or alcohol to cope. Also, by physically and mentally feeling your best, you're able to work more at your full potential. By working toward goals that matter to you, you have less time to use substances. You also have a motivation to avoid them. In fact, people in recovery have reported boredom and anxiety as reasons for returning to use. Boredom, if you've ever listened to Dr. McCauley talk about recovery and how it works in the brain, he talks about boredom being the number one stressor. Who thought of boredom as a stressor? I mean, I didn't. But if you really break it down, it makes sense. So other reasons, for returning to use can be a lack of motivator, like a job, a sense of purpose in your life, or healthy relationships with others. If you're taking care of yourself, you can help reduce stress and anxiety, and you're filling your time with things that you enjoy. So I'll give you some specific ways that you can practice your self-care. Maintaining boundaries. An example of maintaining your boundaries might be prioritizing the things that are important to you. Another example would be saying no more often to that friend who always assumes you're going to help them whenever they need you. It reminds me, back in the day, there used to be a bumper sticker that people would have. Yes, this is my truck. No, I won't help you move. It's a boundary on a bumper sticker. Maintaining spirituality is also a form of self-care. And that could be different for everybody. I know I have people that I work with, for them, spirituality might be religion, might be going to church. Spirituality might be 12-step meeting. Spirituality might be going out into the forest and hiking and connecting with nature. It can look different for you, but feeling that connection to the universe, feeling that connection to the people around you, can go a long way in feeling grounded and safe in your life. You can also volunteer or maybe try some new hobbies. Remember hobbies, remember fun. I think when we get engaged in adulting, it's as if, the toy store closes and we're all over. It's not like that. You can still go roller skating. Well, theoretically, you can still play miniature golf. You can still blow bubbles in the backyard or run through the sprinklers. These things are all still fun if they were ever fun. And I think taking time to really reflect on things that you might have enjoyed before, or things that you thought you might enjoy and never tried, now's the time to start looking at that and kind of actually bringing them into your life. Something else that's really important is dealing with negative emotions. If you've gone through this for a little while, you may have noticed there are ups and downs, and sometimes that's pause, and sometimes it's your brain restabilizing, and sometimes it's just adjusting to a different way of life. It's important to face negative emotions and deal with them rather than stuffing them, rather than avoiding them, because that will also help you avoid returning to use as a way to cope with your emotions. And of course, working with a therapist is never discouraged, said the therapist. So how about social support in self-care? Well, it's really important. There's a reason that there's such a lot of support meetings that revolve around recovery. And there are 12-step meetings, right? AA or NA, there's CODA, there's Al-Anon. 12-step is not for everyone. So if you're someone who is not particularly engaged by 12-step, be sure you do yourself the favor of continuing to look at different recovery support. It might be a mental health support group. It might be Smart Recovery. It might be Dharma Recovery or LifeRing. LifeRing seems harder to find nowadays. It might be Celebrate Recovery. Recovery support is everywhere if you look for it. And I think sometimes that partnering up with someone can be helpful if you're comfortable and trust that person to, hear what you have to share. I know that going to the gym with someone sometimes gets me to the gym more often than trying to go by myself. And lots of things do, because we're social animals. So finding somebody that you can feel comfortable with and share some activities can also be helpful. Volunteering to do something that you feel passionate about. Maybe your satisfaction isn't going to come from your job entirely. Your job's okay, but maybe there's something else there. Maybe there's an art group. Maybe you want to volunteer to pet the cats at the SPCA, or, help them over there, or you want to work with kids or volunteer at the library. There's so many different things out there, so many different places that can use help. Also, spending quality time with the people that you care about and that care about you, whether that's family, friends, close coworkers, sober support. And then surrounding yourself with people who accept and respect you. When we are accepted and respected, it's like watering a little plant. It's like fertilizer. It just, you blossom and grow in the sun. So self-care is actually one of the rules of recovery, because, as I've said, stress can lead people to return to use. Research has found this to be the case at the biological level as well. Cortisol is the hormone that our bodies release when we're under stress. The more stress we experience, the greater the amount of cortisol our bodies release. There have been some studies that have found that increases in cortisol are associated with returning to use. Also, sorry, we'll just edit that out later. Also, they say that returning to use is not a one-time event. It can occur, it occurs in 3 stages. The first step is emotional relapse. First, you experience emotional difficulties. So you might withdraw from others. You might bottle up your emotions. When you notice this is happening, that's your red flag. It's time to connect with others and start sharing those emotions rather than shoving them down. This can help keep you from progressing to that next stage, which is mental relapse. The second stage involves consciously thinking about using drugs or alcohol again. When you notice yourself having thoughts like, that therapy is important. Therapy is a place that you can identify risky situations in which you're likely to relapse. Then you and your therapist can talk about strategies to avoid those situations or to cope with those situations effectively. The last part of this is the physical relapse, the third stage, where you actually use substances again. Even though you may feel disappointed if you are to return to use, it's never too late to get yourself back on the road of recovery. Recovery is a long-term process, and like any journey, it has ups and downs and twists and turns, right? So the bottom line, again, self-care, taking care of your physical, your mental, your emotional self, to be proactive and create a life that you enjoy, that you're passionate about, that's worth living, and that you're satisfied with inside, so that you don't feel the need to reach outside for unhealthy behaviors of any kind, right? Anybody have any thoughts, questions so far? Or I'm not used to just talking for some. Okay. Oh,
Hi.
yeah.
My name is Jeff. I'm here at Bangor. I've got 64 days clean from alcohol.
Mhm.
And so I've been diagnosed in my adult life about when I was 33 with moderate to severe ADHD. And after starting on the medication for it, I realized how much it had really affected my life in many areas. And prior to coming here, I had voluntarily taken myself off of my prescription medication to try and address underlying issues that can also cause PTSD or ADHD-like symptoms with childhood trauma and stuff. But when it comes to doing self-care and stuff, I'm wondering if I'm doing myself a disservice if I continue to stay off my medication when it really made my life better in a lot of ways, helping my executive function and a lot of other things. Because right now, having gone through relapse, I kind of feel like maybe the medication's another form of relapse, but also it made such a tremendously huge impact on my life for the better. So I'm just pondering going forward whether that's a slippery slope or if actually staying on the right medication for my condition will actually be more beneficial for me in the long run. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate your interest and how much you're thinking about this, Jeff. In this particular group, I can't speak to your situation specifically. What I can say is that's a really important conversation to have with a therapist, with a substance use counselor, with a psychiatrist, and not necessarily just one of the three, but maybe all three, who may come at it from different perspectives. And what I often tell clients is something that I got from, learning and sharing DBT skills, which is, rather than ask ourselves if something is right or wrong or good or bad, which are very subjective and judgmental ways of thinking, ask yourself, is it effective? Is it mindful? And so at the end of the day, that's one of those choices that only an individual can make for themselves. But I do think it's an important, it's an important thing to reflect on as you move forward in your sobriety. So I hope that helps. So the next thing I'm going to share with you guys is, and if I don't think you guys were around when I actually went out and did groups, but I was carrying this little thing around with me and passing it out to people. Let me find it. I have so many windows here. 1 second. There we go. Okay. Make it a little bit smaller so you can actually see it. Technical whiz, not so much. Okay. Share this. So you may have seen this already, or you may have seen something very similar, because one thing I have learned being a clinician is there are a lot of gosh darn wheels out there that people have created. This particular wheel is the self-care wheel. If you've seen the wellness wheel, looks a lot like the wellness wheel, but it's really giving us examples, because a lot of times if I say, hey, it'd be a great idea for you to think about putting some self-care into your life, to think about what that might look like. And sometimes I just get this deer in the headlights response, because it's so far removed from someone's experience to be doing things that are simply for their own well-being, not the well-being of someone else, not to perform at their job, not survival skills. And so I like to be really specific in giving some examples of what that can look like. Not for anybody to, take them as law, but to just sort of pull from them what might be helpful to you and then make it your own. You can create a wheel of your own, or I'm going to bet that, you can find one online, or, wherever it is you're staying, if you're still in treatment. Or you can draw your own piece of pie, or you can just make lists. It's really as creative as you want it to be. The goal here is to be looking at your self-care in a way where you're becoming more and more aware and mindful of how in balance your life is. So we all have obligations, right? We have maybe kids to take care of, or significant others, or even parents, or, elderly family that we're taking care of. We have jobs, and bills to pay and all of that. And we make time for all of those things. We have a pretty specific idea of what those things look like, right? This is less specific unless you have had a chance to take the time and go through it. And if you have the time, if you're in a residential setting, or if you have some time off from work, or if you're just focused right now on changing the way you're living, this is a really good time to start looking at those things. When I was working in a residential setting, I would say to people, this is the time that you have to sit down and really look at what your life might look like. What would you like that to be? Because you're not caught in the middle of all the chaos of everyday life, right? You have time to sit on the couch with your notebook and jot stuff down a little bit every day and sort through it and cross things out. It's a good time to be able to reflect on that stuff and put something together. And that can keep you from the place where you leave, you go home, and you wake up in the morning and think, what do I do now? This is when I used to blank, and now I don't know what to do. Well, if you kind of thought about it in advance, then you do know what to do. You might even go so far as to create a schedule for yourself or a routine, because when you're in treatment, you have someone who's actually creating that for you, right? And it can be very comforting. I was going to say comfortable, but not always comfortable, but it can be very comforting and safe feeling to know what's coming next, especially if you suffer from anxiety, because anxiety is basically the fear of, I don't know what's coming next, and it could be anything, right? So the more you've thought about this and the more you've kind of coped ahead, the more likely this is to be manageable. So, I see a hand. I'm gonna kind of go through this, and then I will give everybody a chance to weigh in again, if that's okay. So you can see, and you probably can't see all the details on this, and that's totally fine because I'm going to read them for you. But the idea is that you're dividing up your self-care, or if you want to think of wellness, into these 6 different sections. Now, everybody has a different idea of what these sections might look like to them, right? But they are basically physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, personal, and professional on this wheel. Again, this is all about you and your individual journey. So if you want those spaces to have different names, go for it. Just to give you some examples, though, that they have given us here. Under physical, safe housing, safe place to live, regular health care, eating healthy, exercising, being sexual, getting enough sleep, taking vacations, taking time off, massages, acupuncture, bubble baths, taking a walk, asking to be nurtured, kissing, turning off your cell phone, or taking some me time. And for a lot of people, I've noticed taking me time is the most challenging. You can actually schedule that. I'm just saying, you can put it on your calendar. The tough part is following through. Now, again, these may not all be things that appeal to you, but it gives you kind of a sense of what self-care in the physical realm looks like, right? Limiting your screen time. If sleep's an issue, making sure that, you're off screens a few hours before you try to go to bed. Exercising for some people, maybe going to the gym or lifting weights. For some people, it might be walking or hiking or taking your dog out at the end of the day or the morning. It's all very much about what is going to make you feel good and what's going to work for you so that you'll actually do it, right? Under the psychological heading, self-reflection, therapy, journaling, self-awareness, sensory engagement, aromatherapy, going to a symphony or a concert, drawing, painting, gardening, relaxing outdoors in the sun or just in the fresh air, reading something that's helpful to you, joining a support group, thinking about your positive qualities, practicing asking and receiving help. Under emotional, and emotional and psychological can feel the same, but are also a little different. Self-love, self-compassion, affirmations, expressing your emotions through crying, social justice activities, laughing, saying I love you out loud, watching a funny movie or stand-up comedy, cuddling with someone that you care about or your pet, practicing forgiveness, and telling yourself you are beautiful, and finding a hobby to occupy you. Under spiritual, again, everyone has a different way of looking at spirituality. Self-reflection, going into nature, finding a spiritual community, self-cherish, meditate, sing, dance, play, be inspired, take yoga, play with children, go in the ocean, watch the sunset, pray, find a spiritual mentor, volunteer for a cause that's meaningful to you, foster self-forgiveness. Under personal, learn who you are. Figure out what you want in life. Plan short and long-term goals. Make a vision board. Foster friendships or begin new ones. Go on dates. Get coffee with a friend. Write a poem or a book. Just relax with people that you love. Cook outside. And then randomly learn to play guitar. Learn to play clarinet. Music, however, is therapeutic. And then the final one on this wheel is professional. And I'm super enjoying reading sideways like this. These letters are so small. So, okay. Take time for lunch. Okay, that's a huge one. I have worked so many places where people just don't have time for lunch. It's kind of like not having time for sleep. Eventually, it catches up with you, and not in a helpful way. Set boundaries. Don't work overtime unless absolutely necessary. Leave work at work. Do not work during your time off. Get regular supervision. In other words, be able to ask questions and get support wherever you work. Get support from your colleagues. Take mental health days. I wish that were easier in more places. Plan your next career move. Take a class. Take all vacation and sick days. They're there for a reason, not just to go to Disneyland. I once knew someone who had accumulated something like 250 sick days. Now, this is not a judgment, but that's a person who has not been taking time for themselves. And that's means no downtime. And no downtime is not balance. It's kind of like going and going and going. It's like the Energizer bunny that eventually it's just exhausting. And we cannot be at our full potential or full capacity if we are run down and exhausted mentally or physically or both. Right? So that I can look at all the black screens. And then I see a hand up in Bangor.
All right, I've been kind of thrown off by a situation that just occurred, but I would specifically like a copy of that particular model that you just put up. If you could email that to Melanie, and I can use that as a stencil for myself. I'm a man, and that's more geared towards women, but I might be able to translate it. I'm John, by the way, and
Hi.
yeah,
You know what? I can totally do that. And what's funny is that's the rose version, but when I went out to the different sites and was doing this group, there's a blue version. I don't know if the words are any different, but
yeah, that's cool. So I want this to be my last time in treatment, and this organization has been great to me. So I'd just like to thank you and everybody. And I would appreciate that copy of that thingy.
Absolutely. No, I'm happy to do that.
Oops. Did I just start video? No, stop video.
Wow, you just outed everybody. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's why I don't like technology.
Dude, you and me both. Okay, so yeah, I would be happy to send it out. And again, if you're watching from home, you're watching from somewhere else, these kinds of things are, I Google and then I look at all the different things until there's one that resonates with me. And then, I figure out how to use that one. Google and Wikipedia are not our go-tos for, important things like medical diagnosis, for instance. But they can be useful for tools in that way. So yeah, definitely I can do that. Let's see, what else? Self-care. I kind of lost my track here. Self-care. Oh, okay. So for me also, self-care is kind of integrated with mindfulness, which is a word that before they, get involved, many people also find is, annoying as self-care. But really, when I think about mindfulness, I'm not thinking about meditation. Meditation is totally a form of mindfulness. But mindfulness at its purest is really just being present in your life, in this moment, right? And not to take that too literally, but the goal is not to be putting your energy into the past, into things that have already happened that you can no longer change, or into worrying about the future over which you have no control. The only minute we really have is the next minute. And how are we spending that next minute? If we're spending it in the past or the future, then we're not experiencing whatever is going on now that we might enjoy. So mindfulness practice, actually talking about ADHD, mindfulness practice is really a way of focus. It's training your mind to focus and to know that when you say focus, it knows to focus. And so focus can be on anything. Focus can be, I'm now going to focus and release everything and just be at peace and relaxation for X number of minutes. Or focus can mean, I'm really going to experience whatever's going on here. Focus can also be, helpful in tasks. And the more your brain becomes accustomed to taking those cues from you, the easier it is to find that focus. So I tell people, for myself, meditation, I know when I used to hear meditation, I used to picture, somebody cross-legged on a cushion and, emptying their mind, and like, yeah, that's way too much for me. I think the idea of emptying my mind is lovely. Also, just don't think it's going to happen. However, meditation for even just a few minutes can be very relaxing because, like other things that achieve focus, it slows everything down, and your brain can only do so many things at once. So mindfulness, for instance, doing the dishes, something we all love, some of us. When you do the dishes, are you being mindful? You can be in the doing the dishes moment. You can smell the soap. You can feel the different textures and the different temperatures of the pots and pans and plates and the water and the bubbles, the sponge. You can see all the little things go washing down the drain and sliding off the plates, and get that satisfaction when you get that really grungy thing off the dish. You can be really present in that moment and using all of your senses. And that's part of mindfulness, is trying to access as many of our senses as possible in any given moment and in any experience. If you have anxiety or have had anxiety, you may have learned about grounding, which is accessing all 5 of those senses, or sometimes 3 of the senses, right? But it grounds you in space and time, so that if you're feeling a little untethered or overwhelmed, you can place yourself on the floor, in this chair, in this room, by identifying specific things with your eyes and your ears and your nose and your hands, right? And maybe taste, which tends to be the trickier one. But those are all components of mindfulness. And mindfulness is really just about being very present in the moment. So if you are incorporating self-care, I always encourage people to incorporate mindfulness into that. And in addition to doing activities, like for instance, we used to go on mindful walks. We'd take a group of people and I would say, okay, see if we can find something that starts with every letter of the alphabet, right? I spy with my little eye. And we would go for a walk. When you do that kind of a mindful walk, whatever goal you set for yourself, it could be finding things that are orange, it could be finding flowers, it could be whatever. You'll notice a lot more things on your walk. Even if you've taken that same walk time after time after time, I almost can guarantee you that you will notice things that you never noticed before, because your intention is about being in that walk and noticing. So mindfulness, like so many things, is about intention. And that's why I think it's, for me, become such a core component of how I live and what I do, because at the center of it all, it's like, are you there? What do you notice? Does this feel good? Does it feel bad? Is it causing you pain? Is it causing you joy? Noticing that stuff so that you can find the joy again. And maybe the next time you can proactively do something that won't put you in the distress. And the more aware you are of what's going on with you in your body, in your brain, in your environment, the more effectively you're able to manage those things. Back to that effective word again. So one of the other ways that I encourage people to practice self-care is in their environment. In your home, depending on where you live, you may have less or more control of your surroundings or your office, but there are things that you can do to make your environment a place that is more relaxing, more peaceful, more comforting. And again, calling on your senses to do that. So for instance, you can see I'm working from home. I painted this room green because green makes me feel really peaceful. I have my picture in the back with a book because I'm kind of a reading freak. And you may not be able to paint your walls green, but do you have a color that makes you feel calm? That would be a great color for the bedroom. Maybe it's your sheets or your blanket or a rug that you can put on the floor next to your bed. Maybe it's a throw on your couch. It could be really the smallest of things, a picture on the wall of a place that makes you feel peaceful, the beach, the forest, the city, wherever you find joy. Then that encompasses vision, right? Also, it can be texture when you're talking about things like bedding and rugs and throws and furniture and clothing. How does it feel? Do you ever really stop and think about it? Are there like things that you don't want to put on? Like we used to call them work clothes. They were the clothes that you put on when you went to work, and the first thing you wanted to do is take them off when you got home and put on something else, right? Those are not comfortable clothes. Well, we maybe all have to wear work clothes, although I escape pretty well on that. But those are things to think about, right? And so if you do have to wear your work clothes and you have only so much leeway and what choices you can make there, what do you put on when you come home? Is it comfortable? Is the waistband all itchy and scratchy or tight? Is it soft? Is it too warm or too cool? Just things like that are details we don't think about, but when you're really in that moment and think about them, when you walk into your home, you feel that sense of, and not that sense of, right? Scent, right? Kind of an easier one sometimes, but candles, incense, room sprays, maybe it's cinnamon pine cones at Christmas, smell is very closely related to memory. And so you'll notice that smells tend to evoke memories, which may be happy memories and maybe sad memories. So, you want to be you can have fun going to some place and sniffing all the candles or checking out different kinds of incense, which is pretty cheap. But when you walk in, does it smell like you want home to smell? It makes a difference. Even taste, right? Do you have things that are healthy that you also enjoy? The textures, the flavors, the availability, right? So that it's there for you, that you've thought ahead and you've gotten things from the store when you've gone that are the right things, but not just because they're the things someone else said you should eat. They're the things that you're actually going to enjoy that are, healthy for you. So lots of little details, but it can actually be really fun to sort of be thoughtful and mindful of what your environment looks and feels like, and whether it welcomes you or makes you, want to go back out the door and sit in the car. So that's an environmental thing. The last thing that I'm going to share with you guys is something that we call a self-soothing kit. And this is, it's the simplest of ideas, but again, it's really about proximity. It's about thinking and planning ahead and being aware of what will meet your needs, and then having it there for yourself. So a self-soothing kit, also kind of a crappy name, but is anything that you can keep by your nightstand or in your nightstand by your bed. You could keep it in your backpack if you're a student, or your purse. You can keep it in your desk drawer at work. You could keep it by the sofa, if you want to. But basically, it's a little gathering of things that you find soothing. So if you are a person who wakes up in the middle of the night still with nightmares and has a difficult time going back to sleep, what would be helpful to have right there where you can get to it without getting up and stumbling around the house that would be soothing? Maybe it's an essential oil that you can smell, or put, on your temples, a little lavender or something else that's relaxing to you. Maybe it's a little something to eat that's just comforting, not, we don't want to be eating in the middle of the night, not healthy for digestion, but a little taste of something that might just be comforting. It could be the proximity of just having your earbuds or, your phone there where you could play a little short meditation or some guided imagery to sort of soothe you back into sleep that will go off on its own, or a sound machine. People tend to either love or really dislike sound machines. Even some, furry warm socks, right? You wake up in the middle of the night and your feet are cold and you're cranky and you put on some warm fuzzy socks. I have a client who got what she called a warmie, and I actually had 2 or 3 other people from group go order them, and it was basically just it looks like a stuffed animal, but it has the rice inside of it so that you can warm it up in the microwave and just drape it over your shoulder or around your neck. Or, my son made me one out of a sock. You can just put some rice in a tube sock and stick it in the microwave. And it's very, very warming in the winter, or if you have some stiff muscles. So that's a great, those are some possibilities of bedside soothing. When you're looking at things like work or school, you're probably thinking about maybe a photo that, makes you smile, people that you love, or a place that you are relaxed, vacation photo, or even a vision photo, the place that you want to go, or your happy place. I always see these pictures of these amazing tree houses and stuff that I think, okay, I'm not going to live there, but I enjoy just picturing myself there. Mints or little candies, again, with, maybe some kind of an aromatherapy or a smell. You might want one of those little squeeze balls, or a worry stone that you can actually touch that might soothe your anxiety, or some gum. The possibilities are endless. A lot of what self-care is about is, doing it. And sometimes it's about giving yourself permission to relax, permission to have fun, permission to deserve joy and relaxation and peace of mind and internal calm and serenity, right? And sometimes if you're going the other direction, more toward depressive states, sometimes it's about motivating yourself. And that is not so much about giving yourself permission as reminding yourself that you're worthy and that you deserve peace of mind, because everyone does.